solidarity can't be just words. It has to come with action. So as a community, it is our responsibility to address gun violence, not just after something has happened, but before it happens. That means investing in our communities, investing in our young people, and supporting the organizations and the people who are on the ground every day doing the work.
The continued violence against our young people, you guys, this is not normal. This is not normal by any means.
There is a lot of frightened and frustrated and heartbroken people after last Sunday's mass shooting at Edmonds Arcadia Lake, where once again we come away asking questions about what can be done to prevent this from happening again. You just heard from my two guests this week, local community activist and rapper J.B. Williams, as well as Jayshawna Smith, both with Live Free Oklahoma, an organization that is dedicated to creating a future free of violence. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
I appreciate that. Jayshawna, you said a couple of times when you were addressing the media that the focus on this cannot be on logistics. What is your concern when we focus on just what happened? What are we missing?
Well, we're missing the fact that our young people need consistent community people that are supporting them. You know, we volunteer a lot of times in a lot of these schools, and what we hear most times is that, are you going to come back? And so one of our things is just being consistent. And I think as long as we're consistent and then we make that connection also as well with the students and we take time to listen to them, then that also engages us within the community and connecting us with them, even with their parents as well. And so it can't just be about, well, why were they there? You know, we have to look before what happened and then go from there, because if we just look at why they're there, then we're missing the whole aspect of what happened.
Right, JB, you said shootings like this, violence like this, they don't just happen on their own. As you said, this was oftentimes the result of unmet needs over years, over decades, over generations, you said.
Yeah, so, you know, not only is it, you know, unmet needs, but it's also a lot of unaddressed trauma. And one thing that I think, you know, we strive to do, especially with Live Free Oklahoma, is to help, you know, our young people understand what it means to have conflict resolution, peer mediation, de-escalation, things like that, you know. So we try to equip, you know, young people with those things so these things don't happen. Oftentimes what happens is, you know, something happens and then we react to it after the fact. But intervention is, you know, is really working with those who are at the highest risk of being involved. So you think about this shooting, right?
Right.
You have 22 people who were hit. You have one who was who passed away, and you know, now I'm in a position where now I'm thinking, okay, now I have 22 more people who are at higher risk of being involved in a shooting again, because if a kid is carrying a gun, a weapon, you know, it's to protect themselves, you know. And so if I've never carried a weapon before, but I'm in a space where, you know, I don't feel safe, then I might be.
Now you might be the one carrying a weapon as well.
But it's important to say that's not just with kids. That's with anybody. That's with anybody. It's not just with kids. It's not just with, you know, a certain group of people.
Right.
You know, that's in our nature to want to protect ourselves. So now what I'm saying is for me, somebody who works with these kids, I understand that now I have, you know, kids who are now they're on the high risk part of the problem. And so how can we engage with them so they feel comfortable where they don't have to carry a weapon,
right,
and we can help them to figure out ways to have peace agreements if, you know, conflict, you know, arises.
Because as you're describing it, it's almost like violence can draw in more violence. It can lead to a spiral, a nonstop wheel that doesn't stop moving. Police, I know, I mean, listen, police said that the majority of the people there are over 100 people there. They said the majority of the people there were there to have a good time.
Yeah. So
they weren't there to fight.
Right. So I'll say this, you know, just, you know, from the kids I've been working with who were there, you know, everybody was having a great time. it was good energy. It was a great environment. There was no indication that this would happen. And so what that tells me is that kids can go out, people can go out and have fun and have a great time. What we have to do is figure out why this happened and how we prevent it from happening again.
Jayshana, what's the key to getting buy-in? And what is the type of buy-in we need from community members, from the decision makers? We're talking legislators, civic leaders, and people, because sometimes, as you said, the focus can be on the wrong things. But if we're trying to make long-term change, that makes long-term visionary types of changes.
Yeah. Well, we can't be just invested in moments like this. We have to invest consistently. Right. We have to come together as a community. I always say whenever we're talking to our students or to community members, like, you have this big rope, right? If it's just one strand that's tethered together, then that's going to be easily broken. But if we continue to stay like this as a community, it's a lot harder to break. And so growing up, we had community members that could say something to us if we were doing something that wasn't right. And now it's kind of been separated, and a lot of the focus may be folks are like, well, they're single parent homes and they're this and they're that and they're that. Well, if we know people that have single parent homes, then why can't we come together as a community and be a support system to the children?
Can I ask you more, like, specifically, what would that look like? What's a change that we should be making right now to make it easier so that kids don't end up in, that we don't end up with situations like these? What's something specific we can do?
I mean, investment. Investment may look like, again, going into the schools.
Are we talking about time, or are we talking about money?
Money, time,
both, right?
money, both. Yes, all of that. It is all about investment and time and consistency. And if we don't do that, again, we have to come together in regards to that. And so,
yeah, one thing I always say is that, if you're taking a gun out of a kid's hand, you got to be ready to put something else in it. And so that can look like a bunch of different things. It could look like education. It could look like a job. It could look like a driver's license. Things that, to us might seem like, not a big deal, but a lot of times those things are barriers for helping a kid get over a hump. And then it's also important to point out that, like you said, there was over 100 people there. And anytime there's any shooting, it's like there's over 100 people there, we have to remind ourselves that there wasn't 100 people shooting. And so whether it's shooting at an event like that, or somewhere in a neighborhood, most often, what data tells us is that it's a small group of people who are involved. And so it's up to us to identify that small group and make sure that we get them the help they need, and make sure we give them the services and resources and help them figure out ways to avoid those situations.
There's going to be people who watch this discussion, and anytime we have discussions about larger issues, when we're talking about systemic failures and things that are failing entire groups and communities, there will be people who say you're not focusing enough on the personal responsibility of the people who are doing that. How do we find that balance when we talk about this? And I know you discussed this, JB, when you addressed the media this week. You said this is not making any excuses for what happened, but how do we talk about one thing while also making sure that personal responsibility is discussed?
I had that conversation today, actually. And I think, the first thing is we have to understand that not everybody or every situation is the same. And whenever you're talking about whether it's a single parent or it's a parent who might know that their kids are involved in certain things, a lot of times, whatever it might be, it doesn't just start there. There's underlying issues that, go into, everything that happens after that. And so it's important that for us as community members to be able to say, I can take responsibility for my part, and then I'm also willing to reach out and help somebody who might just need that extra hand, and not be mad or whatever because they need that extra help. But yeah, I mean, and then we gotta be willing to, as parents, as community members, be willing to take some accountability too. So
sure. Can I just ask you personally? You've had to give this sort of talk, you've had to speak after acts of violence like this in the past, and I can imagine that there's frustration, there's probably exhaustion at the same time. You care about these communities and these kids. What's the hardest thing for you right now, having to have this type of conversation, JB?
Man, you know, that's a great question. That, you know, it is exhausting, and, you know, it's hard whenever this is all that I'm thinking about, and then, like, I get a call or a text about, like, something that has nothing to do with this. I'm like, you don't know, like, how are you calling me about this when we have this, you know, this real big issue going on right now? But, you know, I think the hard part is whenever you're talking to some of these people and these young people and these kids who are affected firsthand, who were there or who have been involved in things like this before, and you're trying to give them help. Or like I had a student yesterday,
Right.
I was talking to who was there, and I said, you know, how about, you know, you think you might need some counseling or therapy? And she was like, nah, I'm good, you know, I'm kind of used to it. It's not a big deal, you know. And I had to remind her, like, this isn't something that you're supposed to get used to. That's not normal. That's okay. That's not okay.
Right.
And so that's the hard part, is that, you know, even at the age I am, and all the things I've seen and all the things I've experienced, you know, to see somebody that young, you know, experience something that traumatic and feel like it's not a big deal.
Right.
So
And
that's the
a
hard
problem.
part.
It really
Yeah.
is. Well, JB, we thank you for being here.
Yeah.
JB Williams, Jashana Smith with us here as well from Live Free, Oklahoma. We appreciate your guys' time. Thanks so much
Yeah, thank you
for being here.